He found her in the snow, lifeless, cold, barely breathing. Her lips were turning blue, her fingers stiff, her heartbeat fading beneath layers of frost. No name, no past. Just those haunting ocean blue eyes that blinked once, before darkness took her. Robin Cross, 30, a billionaire with everything except peace. He was running from the world, from memories, from pain. But in that frozen forest, he found her, and something changed. He carried her through the blizzard, wrapped her trembling body in his coat, lit fires with trembling hands, and whispered, "Don't die. Not tonight." She survived. She smiled. He fell. For the first time in years, Robin let someone in. He believed her, trusted her, loved her, but it was all a lie. At next moment, her eyes turned cold, her voice sharp, and behind her stood her people warriors, hunters, killers. Her tribe. Robin's hands were tied, his heart shattered, and she, the girl he saved with his own soul, was the one about to offer him as a sacrifice. He looked at her one last time, whispered, "Was I ever real to you?" She blinked, then looked away. The night was cold, silent, and almost magical. Stars scattered across the dark sky like diamonds. The tall pine trees stood still, wrapped in a frosty mist, their shadows dancing quietly on the ground. A soft wind rustled through the forest, whispering secrets only the night could understand. Near the edge of a frozen lake, a small campfire glowed warmly, its flames flickering in the breeze. Sitting beside it, wrapped in the quiet of the wilderness, was Robin Hawley, a 30-year-old billionaire, strikingly handsome with sharp blue eyes and a strong jawline. Tonight, he didn't wear a suit or expensive watch. He was dressed simply in a warm hoodie, boots, and a thick scarf. Wealth, power, fame, all meaningless to him now. Just weeks ago, he'd lost the only person who truly mattered, his mother. He wasn't a man of many relationships. Closed off, reserved. His mother had been his anchor. Her death left him drifting, hollow inside. He had left behind the noise of the city, the blinding lights, the fake smiles, and come here into the heart of a forest where no one could reach him, where silence was his only companion. He sipped from a cup of hot black coffee, letting the warmth fight the cold in his chest. His eyes stared into the distance over the frozen lake, where the moonlight painted everything silver. But then, a sound, a strange muffled scream, faint yet sharp, like someone crying out but barely able to breathe. Robin tensed. He put down his cup and stood slowly. His hand instinctively reached toward the knife on his belt. He wasn't afraid of wild animals. He had trained in survival. But this sound, it wasn't animal. It was human. And it had come from the direction of the frozen lake. Then another scream, choked, helpless, distant. Robin moved forward cautiously. His boots crunched lightly over the snow-covered ground. His flashlight scanned the surface of the lake. And then he saw it. A small part of the ice near the center was moving, cracking slightly. And there, a hand, a woman's hand, pushing up from under the thin sheet of ice. Robin's breath caught. His heart jumped. Without thinking, he threw off his jacket, tossed aside his gloves and bag, and rushed toward the lake. The cold wind burned his face, but he didn't stop. Each step on the ice was dangerous, but he moved with focus. The ice creaked under his feet. The cold pierced through his boots, through his bones. But he didn't care. Someone needed help. He reached the cracking point and dropped to his knees, pulling with his hands until the ice broke just enough for him to reach in. His heart skipped again when he saw her, a young woman submerged, barely conscious, shivering, her golden hair floating like a halo around her face. Her lips were turning blue. Robin reached in, wrapped his arms around her, and pulled her up. Her body was icy cold, almost lifeless. But her face, God, she was beautiful. Even half drowned, she looked like a fallen angel. Long lashes, soft skin, high cheekbones. Her wet clothes clung to her, revealing delicate curves. He gently tapped her cheek. Hey, can you hear me? Wake up, please. Her eyelids fluttered. A faint sound escaped her lips. Then suddenly, as if trusting him, she collapsed against him, unconscious. Robin's chest tightened. He pulled her closer and began dragging her back toward the shore, holding her tightly against him. Every movement through the icy water was torture. His muscles burned. His skin felt like it was being stabbed by 1,000 needles. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Finally, he reached the edge of the lake. Using all his strength, he lifted the girl out of the water and laid her gently on the snow. Just as he was about to climb out himself, wham! A hard blow hit his forehead. Pain exploded in his skull. Robin gasped. Blood trickled down his temple as he fell to his knees. Dazed, he looked up at the girl, the one he had just saved. She was standing, tall, steady, completely conscious, and holding a rock in her hand. Robin blinked, confused. What? The girl's eyes, ocean blue, cold and unreadable, stared right into his. She wasn't shivering. Her body didn't tremble from the freezing water. She looked untouched, like the ice had no effect on her. She wore strange clothes, tribal, ancient, made of leather and natural fabrics, decorated with feathers and beads. Her long golden braid hung wet over her shoulder. She had faked everything. Robin's mind reeled. Was this a trap? He tried to get up, but before he could, she stepped forward and slammed the rock into his head again. He fell back with a groan, blood now running freely down his face. The world spun. Then he heard voices, wild, rough voices speaking a strange language. Shapes moved through the trees, shadows with weapons and fur clothing. A dozen people or more, all dressed like her, surrounded him, laughing, cheering. One of them called out something, and a chorus of joyful cries followed. She had caught her prey. They began dragging Robin away, pulling him by his arms. His mind was slipping. The cold, the pain, the blood, everything was mixing into a blur. But as they moved him deeper into the woods, he opened his eyes one last time, and there she was, Susan Myrea, still standing by the lake, watching him, her face calm, emotionless, as if this had all gone exactly the way she planned. And then, darkness. Everything was dark. Robin's head throbbed with pain. His body felt heavy, cold, weak. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious, but now, slowly, he was becoming aware of the hard ground beneath him, damp, dusty, and the tight grip of ropes around his wrists and ankles. He tried to move. He couldn't. His eyes opened. The room was dimly lit, a small space made of wooden planks and stone, lit only by a weak torch hanging on the far wall. The smell of smoke and damp earth filled his lungs. He tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his skull. Blood was dried on his forehead. His arms were tied behind his back, legs pulled tightly with rough rope. Every movement made the cuts sting more. Suddenly, loud voices echoed outside. Cheers, laughs, strange words. Then footsteps. Several of them. Robin barely had time to lift his head when the wooden door creaked open. Two men appeared, tall, muscular, dressed in strange tribal clothes, their faces painted. They dragged his body roughly inside the room and threw him to the ground like a broken doll. Behind them, more figures gathered at the doorway. And then she appeared. Susan Myrea. She walked slowly toward the room. Her golden hair had dried into soft waves. She still wore the same tribal dress, and in her hand, a bow and a bundle of arrows. The people cheered for her. One of the older men clapped her shoulder. "Strong girl. You catch big man," he said in broken English, laughing proudly. Susan gave a polite nod but said nothing. She stepped quietly into the room. Her shadow stretched across the floor as the fire behind her flickered. She looked at Robin, still unconscious, breathing heavily. She stood there for a moment, still, staring. Something inside her shifted. She didn't know what it was, but her heart beat a little faster. Her breath caught for a second. There was something about the man lying there, something strange, something that made her chest feel tight. Was it guilt? Was it curiosity? Or something else? She knelt slightly, lowering her face toward him, watching the way his lashes curled, how his breath moved slowly between his parted lips. He looked strong, yet lost. Brave, yet broken. She almost reached out to touch his face, but stopped. Instead, she stood up again. She turned around and walked out, and gently closed the door behind her. Minutes passed. A groan broke the silence. Robin slowly opened his eyes. His vision swirled. His head felt like a hammer had struck it twice. He tried to move again. The ropes pulled tighter. He was awake now, fully. He looked around in panic. His breathing quickened. "Where am I?" he whispered. He shuffled backward, hitting the cold wall. Then he pushed himself up to his knees and dragged his body toward the wooden door. His fingers reached for the crack in the door frame. Through the thin gaps, he could see dim torchlight, people moving, and the sounds of drums, chants, and laughter outside. He slammed his shoulder into the door. Once, twice. It didn't budge. "Damn it," he muttered. He leaned against the door and took a deep, shaky breath. This was real. He had been kidnapped. He had no phone, no gear, no way to call for help. His smartwatch gone, his weapons gone. Even his boots had been replaced with rough sandals. They had stripped him of everything. "Seriously?" he whispered, his voice bitter. He closed his eyes for a moment. In today's world, in the year he lived in, how could tribes like this still exist? Who were these people? And why had they captured him? His thoughts raced. He had heard stories about hidden tribes, off-the-grid communities, but he had never believed they could be this organized or dangerous. And that girl with the piercing blue eyes and that unforgettable face, she wasn't just anyone. He had seen it in her walk, in the way the others treated her. She held power here. Suddenly, the door creaked again. Robin's eyes shot up. This time, several people stepped inside. Men, tall and broad-shouldered, with painted faces and weapons strapped across their backs. Their expressions were cold and unreadable. But then she entered. Susan, and with her, another man. He was leaner, his hair tied back in braids, and he wore more decorated garments, likely someone of status in the tribe. He walked confidently, too confidently, and stayed close to Susan, far too close. His hand slid to her waist possessively. Robin noticed it instantly. Something inside him tightened. He didn't know why, but he didn't like it. The man leaned toward Susan, whispering something in her ear. She didn't respond. Her face stayed calm. Her eyes were on Robin. Only on him. She stared at him quietly, her gaze unreadable, not angry, not amused, just searching. Robin stood still, his heart pounding as the eyes of the tribal leaders burned into him like fire. Their faces were painted, stern, and filled with suspicion. One of them stepped forward and started speaking. The words came fast in a language Robin couldn't understand. Now and then he caught an English word: intruder, danger, kill, but they only made him more confused. He looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening, but nothing made sense. Then she stepped forward, Susan. Barefoot and graceful, she moved toward him and softly lowered herself to the ground, sitting on her toes right in front of him. Her long dark hair flowed gently over her shoulder and her green eyes locked into his. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The anger, the danger, the fear, it all faded into the softness of her gaze. Robin could hardly breathe. She whispered to him, "They're asking why you came here." He looked at her, not knowing what to say. Susan continued in a calm, low voice, "This part of the forest is deep and sacred. Outsiders are not allowed here. These people, they don't trust the world outside. Not anymore." Robin listened, his heart sinking. "There are precious minerals in these lands," she said, her voice serious now. "If the outside world finds out, they will destroy everything." Just like before. Robin's throat tightened. Susan looked into his eyes again. "They've killed others before, people who came too close. People like you." Robin felt a chill run through his veins. Fear began to crawl up his spine. He looked at the tribal leaders. They were so glaring, their hands resting dangerously close to their weapons. "I didn't come here for that," he whispered quickly, his voice shaking. I needed to escape. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." Susan didn't smile, but there was something soft, almost sad on her face. "Then that's your fate," she said quietly. "It's your bad luck." A bitter smile touched her lips. It wasn't cruel, just broken. Robin placed his hand on his forehead, overwhelmed. The air felt heavy, thick with danger. Everything around him felt too quiet, too still, like the forest was holding its breath. The tribal leaders muttered something and began to turn away. Robin watched them, unsure of what would happen next. But then Susan stood again, turned slightly, and said over her shoulder, "They're tired today. Maybe they won't kill you tonight." She looked back one last time, but tomorrow? Her voice was soft, but it cut like a knife. "Maybe tomorrow." And with that, she walked away, disappearing into the shadows with the others. Robin was left standing alone, surrounded by trees, silence, and the terrifying unknown. The silence inside the dark hut was thick. Robin sat alone, tied to a wooden post. His wrists burned from the rough rope cutting into his skin. His breathing was steady, but his mind was a storm. Why the hell did I come to this godforsaken jungle? He clenched his jaw, his eyes searching the dim corners of the hut, but there was nothing, only shadows and cold earth. He wasn't scared, no. Robin Cross wasn't the kind of man to bow down to fear, but regret? That was a harder enemy. He was angry at those tribal people who dragged him here, at himself for stepping into their cursed forest. "If they untied me, I'd show them what real escape looks like," he muttered under his breath. But they had tied him well, like he was some kind of wild beast. The night outside grew darker. A deep, eerie silence wrapped around everything. The jungle was alive, but here inside it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Robin's throat was dry. The hunger gnawed at his stomach, and thirst was worse. His lips cracked. His head leaned back against the pillar. "Maybe this is how I die," he whispered to himself. "Well, so be it." He smiled bitterly. "Quite the ending for a billionaire, huh?" He said to no one. To distract himself, he softly began to hum a song something his mother used to sing when he was little. That's when it happened. A soft creaking noise. He paused. The door. It opened slowly, letting in a faint flicker of golden light. Robin narrowed his eyes. A girl stepped in holding a candle in her hand. Her movements were soft, like she was trying not to wake the silence. She placed the candle down on a stone in the corner, and the shadows on the wall danced like whispers. He looked at her face, and his breath caught. It was her. Susan. He heard the tribal people calling her by this name. That same girl with wild brown hair and sharp eyes that looked straight into the soul. The same girl who had stared at him with hatred when he first arrived. And yet now, something had changed in her gaze. Robin's lips curved. Did you come here out of pity? His voice was dry, cracked, but still teasing. Are you starting to feel sorry for me? She walked towards him slowly, her arms crossed, her eyes locked on his. Maybe I am, she said with a shrug. Watching a man die in his prime, it doesn't sit well with me. Then she added with a slight smirk, besides, they plan to kill you brutally. I don't enjoy watching blood. Robin chuckled. Such kindness. Untouched. His tone was sarcastic, but his heart, it was beating faster. Susan sat in front of him now, close. Her face glowing in the candlelight, her expressions unreadable. Robin tilted his head, studying her. You're not like the others. Don't flatter me, she said. He leaned slightly forward, as much as his tied hands allowed. What's your name again? Susan, right? You don't seem like the murdering type. Susan rolled her eyes, but the corners of her lips twitched. Don't test me. I might surprise you. Oh, I hope you do. She laughed a soft, real laugh, and Robin swore it was the sweetest sound he'd heard in days. I brought you something, she said. She pulled out a piece of bread wrapped in leaves. It was warm. It smelled like something earthy and sweet, definitely tribal, but his starving senses didn't care. She broke a piece and brought it to his lips. Robin raised an eyebrow. You're going to feed me too? Now that's royal treatment. Don't get used to it. She pushed the piece gently into his mouth. He chewed slowly, savoring every bite. She reached for a small clay bowl and brought it to his lips. Fresh water. He drank deeply, and when he looked at her again, his eyes had softened. You could untie me, he said gently. I could eat myself, you know. Susan narrowed her eyes. And let you run or strangle me? I wouldn't. You're too dangerous. I think you'd overpower me, he said with a playful smile. Her cheeks turned slightly pink. You're not as smart as you look. He smiled. You're not as heartless as you act. She didn't reply. She just looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. And he, in return, saw the girl behind the strength. The one who had a heart that beat too fast and eyes that held stories she never told. I didn't expect someone like you here, Robin said softly. You're different. Susan stood up suddenly, breaking the moment. Eat the rest, she said. Her tone was colder now. But her eyes, they lingered. Robin looked at her as she turned toward the door. Susan? She stopped. He swallowed hard. Thank you for seeing me. Not just the prisoner, but me. She didn't turn around. She just said, almost in a whisper, Don't thank me yet. Robin's brows furrowed. What do you mean? She looked back now, and her eyes were darker, heavier. They've decided, she said softly. Tonight, they'll kill you. His body tensed. Susan? I'm sorry, she said, and her voice cracked just a little. And with that, she walked out of the hut, leaving the candle behind, leaving him alone again. But this time, it wasn't just the shadows that stayed with him. It was her eyes. It was hope, and the terrifying, beautiful ache of connection. The night had passed. A dull gray light slowly crept into the tiny wooden hut where Robin sat, still tied tightly to the wooden pillar. His muscles ached from the ropes. His eyes were heavy, but sleep had barely touched him. He was restless, confused, and now worried. The air felt strange, heavy. Something wasn't right. Suddenly he heard it. A distant sound, not footsteps, not voices. It was something else. Boom. A low rumble. Then another, closer. And then it began. The rain. It came like a crashing wave, loud, furious, relentless. Within minutes, the sky roared, and sheets of rain poured down on the forest like it was tearing it apart. Robin looked up. Drops began falling inside the hut. The thatched roof of the old structure was no match for this kind of storm. The walls shivered under the pressure of the rain, and water began to drip down from every corner. First slowly, then faster, until the floor turned wet and muddy. Within half an hour, the water had reached his knees. Robin began shouting, struggling against the ropes. "Hey, is anyone out there?" Someone opened the damn door. His voice echoed back at him, swallowed by the sound of the rain. "Seriously? You'll all run off and let me drown in here?" He growled, the frustration building in his chest. "You want me dead, fine. But at least don't let me go like this." The rain didn't care. It just kept falling. He shook his head in disbelief, eyes scanning the unstable ceiling. Great. Just great. First the girl says they'll kill me, and now nature is going to do it before they even try. His heart pounded. Then the door creaked open. Robin turned sharply, eyes widening. 4 people entered, all soaked to the skin. Their clothes clung to their bodies, dripping water onto the floor. Their faces looked pale, anxious. Among them, Susan. Robin's breath caught. She walked in quietly, her eyes searching for his. There was worry written all over her face. "What's going on?" Robin asked immediately, panic in his voice. "Why are you all here? What's happening?" No one answered. Instead, they began speaking in that same tribal language, their voices fast and tense. Hands waved, heads shook. Robin looked at Susan. "Talk to me, please." She didn't turn to him. Not yet. "Susan," he shouted again. This time she spun around, her eyes sharp. "Not now, be quiet. I need to speak with them." Her words cut like a blade. She rarely spoke to him this way. Robin stayed silent, his chest rising with frustration. He watched her argue, her voice rising, falling, rising again. It was clear she was trying to convince them of something. Something big. After what felt like forever, they finally nodded. The group slowly left the hut one by one, pushing through the curtain of rain outside. Only Susan remained. She stood in front of him, her arms crossed, her eyes glassy. "Well?" Robin asked softly, his voice low now. Susan took a shaky breath. "The storm has only just begun," she said. "This entire area. It's going to flood." Robin's brow furrowed. "Our village is built near a monsoon stream. When the rain starts this violently, we don't get much time. If it continues, everything we know will go underwater." Robin swallowed hard. "So what now? Are you evacuating?" Susan hesitated. "There's an old belief," she said, her voice tight, "a legend, that if a beautiful girl sacrifices her husband at the beginning of the flood, the storm stops. The gods are pleased. The land is saved." Robin blinked. His stomach turned cold. "What did Jude say?" He whispered. Susan looked at him, expression unreadable. "They want to sacrifice someone?" Robin stared, lips parting. "Wait, do you mean—" "Yes," she said quietly. "They've chosen you." His heart dropped. "For real?" he said, almost in disbelief. "They're going to kill me and think it'll stop the rain." "They believe it," she said. Robin let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "And what, they'll have a feast after that?" Susan didn't smile. She didn't blink. She only said, "You have to become someone's husband first." Robin's face turned pale. "I have to what?" "It's part of the ritual. A man must be wed. He must be deeply connected to the land. Through love." Robin looked at her, his voice shaking. "And whose husband am I supposed to become?" Susan looked down for a second, then raised her eyes to meet his. "Mine." Silence. Only the rain spoke. Robin felt everything slow down. His mind couldn't process the words. He was supposed to be terrified, but strangely, he wasn't. He just looked at her. Really looked. Her face, the droplets of rain sliding from her forehead, her trembling lips, the faintest shimmer of tears in her eyes. She wasn't lying. She wasn't joking. And somehow, it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like fate. Robin smiled. Just a little. So, he said gently, before I die, I get to be your husband. Susan looked away. Robin tilted his head. You didn't want this, did you? No, she said, her voice breaking. Then why? Because I didn't want someone else to do it, she whispered. If someone has to send you away, I wanted it to be me. Robin felt his chest ache, not with pain, with something else. Warm, sad, strange. He looked at her, his voice tender now. You care about me? Susan didn't answer. She just stood there, her eyes locked on his. They didn't need to say it. Everything was in their gaze. Two hearts in a storm, bound by something that had no name. The rain poured harder, but the silence between them was louder. And then, without another word, Susan turned and walked toward the door. She paused before stepping out, not looking back. Her voice was soft. Tonight, it will happen. Then she disappeared into the rain. Robin sat in the corner of the damp hut, his wrists still tied, his shirt soaked and clinging to his skin. The floor beneath him had turned to mud. The rain had been falling all day, turning the forest ground into a swamp. Though the storm had softened now, a slow drizzle still whispered through the thick leaves above. He felt a strange kind of fatigue, not just in his bones, but in his soul. Time had blurred. Minutes felt like hours. Yet his heart clung to one name. Susan. What she had said the night before echoed endlessly in his mind. Wait for me. No matter what happens, trust me. Was it a promise or a farewell? He didn't know. Evening crept in, casting a bluish glow through the gaps in the wooden walls. Just as his eyes were beginning to close, the creak of the door snapped him awake. Several men stormed in, faces painted, eyes cold. Without a word, they untied his hands, only to grab his arms firmly and pull him up. He staggered but didn't resist. They dragged him out of the hut. Outside, the rain had stopped. Torches burned in circles, casting flickering orange shadows across the clearing. A bonfire crackled in the center, surrounded by tribal members. Some held torches. Others had flashlights likely stolen from past outsiders. They chanted in a language he didn't understand, but Robin's eyes searched wildly for her. And then she appeared. From behind the circle, Susan stepped forward. Robin froze. She was no longer the wild girl in a torn dress. She wore a crimson ceremonial gown made of soft forest silk and golden thread. Her hair flowed down in waves, decorated with white forest flowers. A necklace of bones and pearls hung around her neck. Her eyes glowed in the firelight. She looked like a goddess, and she was walking straight toward him. They placed Robin inside a red circle painted on the ground. He didn't resist. His heart pounded, but not from fear, only awe. The drums silenced. The tribe elder stepped between them. He said something in their native tongue to Susan. She nodded solemnly. Robin didn't understand, but he could see it in her eyes. Something was happening. Something huge. They were married right there in the firelight. A flower crown was placed on her head. A red mark drawn on Robin's forehead. A chant, a nod, and the crowd cheered. Then they led the two of them away to a beautifully decorated forest chamber built of wood, silk, and scented leaves. Lanterns lit the room in a warm golden glow. A bed covered in soft fur and petals stood in the middle. Robin turned to Susan. His chest tightened as he saw her nervous smile. Just before they entered, the tribal chief whispered something into Susan's ear. Robin noticed her expression shift slightly. She looked at the ground. What did he say? Robin asked, his voice hoarse. Susan hesitated. Her eyes slowly met his. He reminded me that tonight I must treat you like my husband. Robin blinked. He said we must share the bond. Physically, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Only then will they believe the gods accept our union. If that happens, then tomorrow. She paused. A tear shimmered in her eyes. Then tomorrow morning, they'll sacrifice you. Silence fell between them. Robin stared at her. The rain began again, soft, steady, dripping from the leaves, tapping on the roof. And then he did something unexpected. He smiled, took a slow step toward her. If being with you means I must face death, he whispered, then I'll walk toward it gladly. Susan's breath caught. Robin continued, voice gentle, because when I look at you, I see the only purpose I've ever needed. You make this broken life of mine feel like it finally matters. She closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. He stepped closer and gently lifted her chin. Don't cry, Susan, not tonight. Tonight, we are husband and wife. She opened her eyes slowly. I'm scared, she whispered, of loving you, of losing you, of all of it. He cupped her face. Then love me tonight without fear, and let this night be ours. She nodded, trembling. They sat on the bed, facing each other. Robin reached for her hand. Do you remember when I first found you in the forest? She smiled faintly. You looked lost. I was, he said, but then I saw you. You were like a spark in the middle of all that emptiness. She blushed. He leaned closer. You saved me, Susan. Now let me be yours. Even if only for a night. Their lips met softly at first. A gentle kiss, full of emotions unspoken, then deeper, warmer. As the rain tapped above them, their bodies moved closer, fingers intertwined, faces brushed. Hearts raced. He laid her gently on the bed of petals, covering her with the soft fur blanket. You're beautiful, he murmured. So are you, she whispered back. They spoke in broken phrases, whispered secrets, laughed through tears, kissed like it was the first and last time. Outside, the fire dimmed. Inside, their world burned quietly with love. Hours passed. The night deepened. They lay side by side, wrapped in each other's warmth. Susan rested her head on his chest. Robin. I wish I could steal time. He kissed her forehead. Then let's pretend we have forever. She smiled sleepily, tracing circles on his chest. If tomorrow never comes, remember, tonight you were loved. He closed his eyes, tightening his hold on her. And I'll die with that love in my heart. The rain fell heavier now, but inside their little chamber, everything was still. Two hearts, one vow, a night that no death could ever erase. The morning sun rose slowly above the thick jungle, casting a golden glow through the misty trees. The forest was silent, eerily silent. Even the birds seemed to know what was about to happen. Robin sat on the cold stone floor of the small wooden hut, his hands tied, his heart heavy. His mind kept racing back to the night before Susan's words, her smile, the fear hidden in her eyes. He looked up and found her standing at the entrance, her long dark hair falling over her shoulders, her eyes locked onto his. You're awake, she whispered softly, kneeling beside him. I didn't sleep, he replied, his voice dry and broken. Susan, are they really going to kill me today? She looked away for a moment, then nodded slowly. Yes, they believe you're a threat. They think you'll expose their world, their secrets. I tried, but I couldn't change their minds. Robin felt a lump rise in his throat. And you? What do you believe? Susan looked back at him, her eyes filled with sadness. I believe you came here with a broken heart, not with greed. I saw it the first moment I looked into your eyes. There was silence between them, heavy and full of things left unsaid. Moments later, two tribal guards appeared at the doorway, tall and angry. They signaled Susan to move aside. One of them untied Robin roughly and pushed him forward. "It's time," Susan whispered, walking beside him as they made their way deep into the jungle. The path was narrow, surrounded by tall trees and thick vines. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, lighting up Susan's face in soft golden tones. Robin kept looking at her, trying to memorize her every feature. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. Finally, they reached a hidden valley, a sacred spot. A high cliff overlooked a wild river below. The tribal elders stood in a circle, chanting in their ancient tongue. In the middle stood a stone altar, darkened by years of sacrifice. Robin was pushed to his knees. Susan stood beside him, her hands trembling. The head elder spoke in a deep voice, some words broken in English. "This man does not belong. He brings danger. He must be returned to Earth." Robin looked around helplessly. No one showed mercy, not even a flicker of hesitation. Suddenly, Susan stepped forward. "Wait," she shouted, her voice strong, surprising even Robin. Everyone turned to look at her. "I will do it," she said clearly. "Take me instead." Gasps filled the air. Robin's eyes widened in horror. "No, Susan, what are you saying?" She turned to him, tears brimming in her eyes. "You still have a life, Robin. You don't belong here. You belong to the world out there. I was born in this jungle. I have nowhere else to go. But you must live." "No, please don't." Robin tried to stand, but was held down. Susan gave him a small smile, the kind that breaks hearts. "You once asked me why I trusted you. It's because I knew you were different. And now I need you to trust me." Before anyone could stop her, Susan climbed the altar and looked at the head elder. "I offer myself," she said, her voice steady. "Let him go." There was a long pause. The elder gave a slow nod. Robin screamed, "No, no, Susan, please. Don't do this." She bent down quickly, her lips close to his ear. "Robin, listen to me. When I fall, run to the edge. The river below flows west. Swim. It leads to the forest end. Follow it. You'll find a road. Then go back to your city, to your life." Tears streamed down his face. "I can't leave you, please. I love you." She touched his face gently. "I love you too." And then, in one swift moment, she turned, pushed him hard so hard he flew backward, broke through the wooden fence, and fell from the cliff. He fell fast, his body spinning, heartbreaking, until water crashed around him. Cold, violent, rushing. Robin surfaced, coughing and gasping for air. The current pulled him fast. He reached out, swimming with all his strength. He didn't look back. He couldn't. He screamed her name into the wind. "Susan." But the jungle didn't answer. He cried as the river carried him away. His chest hurt more than his lungs. His soul felt ripped. Hours passed. Robin finally reached the edge of the jungle where the river ended. A narrow road appeared, dusty and forgotten. He dragged himself out, soaked and broken. A truck passed by. A man stopped. "Hey, are you okay?" "You need help?" Robin looked up, his eyes red. "Yeah, I need to go home." The man helped him in. They drove away, but Robin didn't feel alive. He left the jungle, but his heart stayed there. With her, with Susan, the girl who gave him life by giving up her own.